search the term pixel art, and as you can see right here, this Mewtwo, this is a perfect example because you can see the graph in the background as well as on the image. However, here, Link, the graph is only on the image and not on the background, so that would not be a good choice. So just typing the term pixel art gives you a lot of random things. So you would want to type in what exactly you're looking for. So like here, flower, pixel art flower. Now you see flowers on a pixelated grid. And if you're looking for a specific character, such as like a Zelda character like Link, then you would type that in. And as you can see right here, those would be good choices because of the graph. And right here, this one I have already made. It is on my wall, seen here. And I'm going to be making Banana or Banana Cat, which is a character from a Japanese anime. So you can click on something that looks good, and then you can scroll down from that image and you will find more images which may be more appealing. And this is the image here that I will be making. So once you've found what you're looking for, you want to save that to your computer or your phone, and you're going to want to print it out. I recommend printing out 2 copies. Of course, check out these cute birds. My husband loves birds, so I'll probably in the future make a wall hanging of a pixelated bird. And it's just that simple. Tools you will need to make pixel quilting easier and possible. Of course, you're going to need rulers. Nice quilting ruler, whether big or small, is completely up to you. I highly recommend a slotted ruler like this one. Doesn't matter which brand, there's many. Also, nice big 12.5-inch square ruler, rotary cutter, permanent marking tool, and of course you're going to want a temporary marking tool as well, such as an erasable pen or chalk, an iron. I recommend not using a fancy iron for this. Anytime I'm using something with glue on it, I always pull out the Walmart special. Some cardboard, of course, large enough that a 12.5-inch ruler or larger would fit on it. That's your preference. I don't recommend going under 12.5 inches, and that is because the finished block is much smaller. And then, of course, you're going to want some interfacing. This is Pellon Featherweight. I believe you can also get Pellon Sheer. Very lightweight. Next, you're going to want to figure out what size squares you're going to use. To do that, let's assume that each square is representative of 1 inch. So that's what I did, and it was 49 inches across and 93 inches down. So 93 inches down makes it certainly long enough if I were to do 1.5 inches as seam allowance is gone, it would be the 1 inch. However, the 49 on the side for me is a bit short, so I've opted to add borders to my side to bring it to about, I think, 72. So that would be about a twin size if I'm not mistaken. So originally, for example, I wanted to use 2.5-inch squares, but after doing the math, I realized that the quilt would be absolutely massive. So 1.5 inches it was. And that's what you would do too. If you were to choose a smaller image, then you could do larger squares. Or if you use a large image like this one, then you'd want to use smaller squares. Now to calculate yardage, we're going to count the squares in every single color and mark that down. So right now, as you can see, I am counting all the background. There is a certain number of squares that fit into a yard of fabric, and luckily for us, someone took the time to make a table. So because I am using 1.5-inch squares, I would look on the table and see that that would be 672 squares. When it comes to calculating yardage, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to count every square within that section of color. So this right here would be my background. This I would just call the dark yellow. And then, as it goes on, you understand how many is in each. And you can see here, the way I did it is I sectioned things off just to make it easier for counting. You can count whichever way is easiest for you. But anyway, I had 2,068 background squares. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to take that number, 2,068, and then we're going to divide that by 672 because that's what I'm going with. I'm going with the 1.5-inch squares and the 42 inches in the yard. And that comes out to 3.077. You round up, of course. So I would count that as 3.1 for yards. And of course, I'm not going to just order 3.1, although I don't think that's quite possible. So I'm just going to order either 3.25. You could do 3.5, just a little bit extra, just to make sure that you are making up for any potential shrinkage with pre-washing or starching. Okay, so let's try that again. Dark yellow, I ended up with 999 squares. So 999 divided by 72. And that is 1.48, round that up to 5, 1.5 yards. And of course, add a quarter, add a half, just add a little bit. You never know if you might make a little mistake here and there. And it's really that simple. Once you've got all of your yardage calculated, it's time to hit the fabric store or the internet, whichever or wherever it is that you go to buy fabric. Figure out all the colors you want. Personally, I think Kona Cotton has a really nice array of colors and the price is good. However, if they don't have what you're looking for, Bella Solids is a pretty good substitute, or vice versa. It's really completely up to you what you're going to do. Next step, you're going to want to make your cardboard cutout. So grab a precision cutting tool or a box cutter and simply place your square ruler on top of your cardboard. I recommend putting some type of weight on top as well, just to prevent any kind of slippage. And then you're just going to cut all the way around it. Next, just go ahead and draw your lines down. In my case, I did 1.5 inches. I don't know why I didn't record it, but I didn't, and that's what it should look like, a nice little graph there. And as you can see, there was some extra on the side, so I'm just taking my ruler and I'm cutting off the excess. Okay, and there you have it. That's the finished template right there. A nice cool grid. And it's really going to come in handy. It's going to save you a lot of time. Believe you me. Never hurts to double check, so make sure that everything is nice and accurate. You'll thank yourself later. The next step we're going to do is to take our interfacing and you're just going to lay it over your grid template here, just like so. You can have it overhang about 1/4 inch just for safety. You don't want to end up with too little. Better to have a little bit too much than a little bit too little. You take a ruler of your choice, and just sort of line it up with the edge of your cardboard template. Grab a rotary cutter. And just like that, you now have your template and your interfacing that you're going to use. And you can see right through this. I used a nice dark marker. Just go ahead and make a bunch of these. Don't worry about these right here because you can do two things. You can overlap, creating another full block, or you can use it on the end when you only have, say, like the thing you're working on is only half as wide. Just like that. And I'll show you an example as we go so you know what I'm talking about. All right, so grab that slotted ruler. Go ahead and grab a piece of your fabric. This one I've got folded over. And what I've done is I've taken that bright green masking tape and I've marked off 1.5-inch intervals just for the sake of speed so I know exactly where I'm cutting. So as you can see, I cut one side and then I turned the ruler around and I cut the other side. And that gives me a bunch of perfectly cut squares in a very short amount of time. And then I've just got different baggies labeled with what these are. For the sake of convenience, I've got the first row done already, and I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. Now you can see here, this is the image I'm going off of. I've got it taped up right in front of me, and now I'm going to start on the second row. But as you can see, the very first block of the second row is just completely blank. So it's very simple. We're only using my background color for this. So I'm placing my interfacing on top of my template. I can see everything right through it. This saves a bunch of time instead of having to individually draw each graph onto every piece of interfacing or spending a load of money and getting pre-made drawn interfacing, gridded interfacing, which you can do. But personally, I think it's a massive waste of money because this is just way simpler. Of course it is because it's my method. So very important, make sure that rough glued edge is facing up. Otherwise, you're going to have a mess on your hands. So obviously, like I said, this is only background color. So all I got to do is take all this light pink and just cover the whole thing. Once you got everything on your template there, go ahead and grab that iron and just place it right on top. Obviously, you're just going to be pressing and holding, lift it, drop it, hold it there. And you're going to do this all over the area. Try not to get the glued area under your iron. It's just a real hassle to have to deal with, like with cleanup and stuff. And these don't have to be on there perfectly. You just want them to be on there enough so that when you slide that interfacing off the top, everything will stay put. Then you can go ahead and cut off the edges there sticking out and then give it a really good ironing without any worry of getting glue on anything. And just like I mentioned, once you've got everything stuck on there, bring it over to your cutting mat. Lay it down flat. And then you just want to take off those edges. What I find incredibly helpful and definitely recommend is to number each block. So this is obviously block number 1 of row 2. I don't have to worry about row 1 because I've already got it done. So I just usually go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, put them together and then start over. And then once I've done that, I cross it off so that I don't accidentally lose my place. And then what I'm doing is I'm counting 8 across and then 8 down because that's how many my template holds. It holds 64. So I want to make sure I'm copying it exactly. Now this one is a little bit more intricate because obviously there's a lot more going on in there. So we're just going to go ahead and do it again. You're going to take your template, you're going to put it down on your ironing board. Go ahead and grab some of your interfacing. Make sure you cut a bunch. I always cut quite a bit, at least 8 pieces or so, and then you got the little half pieces I mentioned earlier. So you're going to count across basically, and you're just going to follow this exactly. Once you've got all the pieces together, take a quick gander, make sure everything is the same, and then go ahead and press it. Move it on over to your cutting table. Don't mind the mess. I always work in chaos like this. Go ahead, cut off those excess pieces there. Bring it right back to that ironing board, flip it around, and give it a good long press. You really want that stuff stuck to it. And I hate to say this, but the glue isn't what it used to be. It really isn't. The next step is pretty important, okay? So you want to make sure you're at 1/4 seam allowance, and you want to keep this consistent the entire time. So you just take the first block of your row. In this case, this is the second row. And you want to fold it over, matching the two squares together, as you can see. So then what I like to do is just put a little clip there and keep it in place. And then I'll continue folding it over as I go down, and then I match the bottom. In this case right here, there's a little bit of a gap. Just match it up till it's right against the one next to it in that case. And don't worry about gaps, because the 1/4 seam allowance will take care of any of those little tiny gaps. It doesn't make it or break it. So then finger press that down. Add another clip. Now this next step can be saved for the end, or you can do it as you go. Personally, I prefer just to do it as I go. And that next step is to make little snips in between the two squares. You can see right here, for example. Be careful not to cut through your stitching, of course. The reason for this step will be made very clear to you when we go through and stitch down the other side. And one more thing I want to mention now. When you are sewing, make sure you decide how you're going to sew, from which direction, and keep that consistent throughout. So in my case, I'm starting from left, and I'm going to continue to move from left to right. And then when that's done, I'm going to move from top to bottom. And the reason for that has to do with nesting the seams. So just take a quick look at the back of this. Nesting the seams is extremely important, because otherwise it will be extremely bulky. And because I kept it all consistent, you can see here that these were able to be nested, which in turn keeps everything very crisp and in place. There's no overlap or anything like that. So now that I've got this nice and clipped, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to repeat. I'm going to take the second row and I'm going to fold it over the third row. And now in this case, because as you see, there's a 1/4 inch that's been clipped shut. So just take this and press this down, because this is still your square. And go ahead and line that up. Make sure that it lines up. And of course, just put a little clip to hold that in place. Repeat the exact same thing. Pull this out a little bit. Push that down, make sure it's lined up. And it is. Grab a clip. Clip that in place. Now press it down. Make sure it's still there. Yep. Once again, the exact same thing. Fold it over once more. Make sure that's lined up with this push down. Clip in place. all the way down here. Same exact thing once again. Clip in place. Press down and put it under the needle. So I'm going to finish clipping this up, folding it over, and when I get to the end, I'll show you the next step. All right, and there you have it. That's the entire side there, stitched. And right now, if you wanted to, you could bring this over to your iron and you can kind of press that if you'd like. Personally, I don't. I wait until the second step and then I start pressing as I go because it gets quite accordion-like. So I'm using this as my guide. I know that this is the right way because I wrote that as I did. So I'm just going to take the top now, fold it down, and I'm going to do the exact same thing I did before. I am matching up my squares, throwing a clip, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do that on the bottom as well. Okay, and this is where things change up. You're going to just want to nest these. And just for the sake of it, you could just clip it all if you want. You don't have to. You can just sort of move them as you go. Depends on your style. If you want, you can use a stiletto. Feel free to backstitch if you want to. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's all going together in the end, so it won't be too big of an issue once this is connected to the top row anyway. The top row, I did backstitch everything. I don't know. I guess it's better to be safe than sorry, but really, it's personal preference. Do not clip anything. Instead, go ahead, open it up, finger press. This is the first block in the row, so it doesn't matter. If I put them all down, then my second row, I will iron these all up so that they'll nest perfectly. And you do the same exact thing again. Now you're on the second row, fold it over onto the third row, and once again, it'll look like those don't match up. But simply take this and temporarily kind of press it down, and you can see it lines up. Go to the bottom, folds. Looks like it doesn't line up, but then you press down the seam allowance and voila, it does line up. Now this one, of course, will be the opposite. You can see this one's already down, so then the other one goes up. This one already naturally is doing its thing, so I'll just leave that one alone. Now this one's a little more you know, you gotta hold it down a bit more because you're going against it. It's facing up and you're moving it that way, so it's gonna wanna push the other way. It's not the worst thing in the world when it happens. I usually just unpick it and restitch it back down. And I just pop that on there. Double check it because it does like to try to push itself back down. All right, I'll show you one more time. This time I'm not gonna clip anything down. And if you want, you could bring it over and iron it because it is gonna kind of curl in like an accordion. And when you iron this, if you use steam, it'll go a lot faster for you. I don't recommend using steam when you're adhering it because first of all, I'm pretty sure the instructions for interfacing say not to. And secondly, you have a piece of cardboard underneath. So let's avoid damaging that. Okay, so I'm not gonna bother clipping it. Let's see, you probably can go a bit faster, but like I said, do whatever makes you feel comfortable. As you can see, it's very simple. It's just, it can get tedious after a little bit. I personally, I get bored really quickly. I wish I didn't, but I do. So I'll do a few of these and get up and go do something else, like draw something or read a book or start cleaning. All right, again, I'm not going to use the clips, and this one, they have to go up. So it's the exact same thing. Make sure it's facing up. Put it on there. Same thing, up and press. Up, press down. Up, press down. Don't lose a finger in the process. Be careful. Heavy machinery. I'm going to finish this up and then we're going to go over to the iron and I'm going to show you how to iron it. I finished it and look at it. All folded up on itself. Let's fix that. Okay, so I want to make sure that it's the right side up, and it is. And in this instance, I'm going to start by ironing all my seams facing up. Be careful not to warp the fabric because it does warp. So you just kind of want to press the heat on top like so. And I have my steam on because it's going to help the process quite a bit. The way I do this is usually I do 2 at a time and then I'll put them together. But you could just make them all at once if you wanted to, and then you could stitch them all together at once if you wanted to, and then iron them all down. It's completely up to you. I just break it up so it's not all the same old for hours on end. Like I said, I unfortunately get bored rather quickly, so I try to keep things moving and different. Okay. So that looks fine on the back. Turn it around. And as you can see, the number is now gone, which is why I like to do things the way I do. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So I know exactly what's what. And I know which side this is because I said that I was putting them all up. So there it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the exact same thing on my second block of my second row. And I'll show you how to put the two pieces together when I've finished. It's now time to join the two blocks of the second row. Very simple, of course. Make sure that everything is orientated as it should be, indicating that everything is the right side. Right sides together, of course, just like any other block you'd put together. And then just make sure all of the seams are nested. As long as they're nested, everything will look good. Don't allow there to be any gaps. You can push things together. You can make things fit. See, as you can see right here, there's a little bit of overlap. I'm just going to pull it a bit. In this case, push this one together a little bit. And this one especially, you can see there's quite a gap. No problem. Just push it together. Don't worry about any of this. That will all disappear within either the seam allowance or you can do a quick trim. But for the most part, this type of project is very forgiving. In that case, I mean, you're gonna be losing the flaws in the seam allowance. Okay, and then just like that, I'm just gonna backstitch it to be safe there. All right. You're going to press the seam open. And that's obviously because, well, look at all the bulk. If you were to do this, it kind of stands up. But when you press it open, it tends to lay pretty flat. So just go ahead. First, I'm going to finger press it because it can be a real obstacle over there with that iron trying to get this open. You can see I've gotten it relatively flat. Over here, just double checking to see, make sure everything fits. I did notice this goes up a little bit, so what I'll be doing before I attach this is just sort of evening it out, losing the least amount of fabric as possible. And according to the picture, it lines up this way, right here. And there is a little bit of extra on the end, but I will fix that when the entire thing is squared up. And I do plan on adding a border on the sides of this to get it to the size I want, because I'm going for a twin size. And this is almost there, but not quite. Lengthwise, it's there. And this right here will fall in line with the size of these once the next block is attached. So I'm gonna go ahead, take this and repeat the steps again, following my chart right here, and go all the way down. And when I finish this row, I will show you the next steps to join these two rows together. So the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure that the picture is completely lined up. Don't worry about the ends. This is the part that matters the most. So as you can see, it's a little bit off right here. So we're going to kind of force that into place. Doesn't have to be super perfect because it will look fine when it's done, but we want to get it as close as possible. Make sure you have your picture with you. Okay, so this is definitely correct. So I'm gonna grab a pin. Do your best to line these up where applicable. They're not all going to nest in perfectly, but many of them should. Right here, even these that are ironed open are for the most part lining up. Feel free to use clips as well. As you can see here, these don't really line up. No, they don't nest. They line up, but they don't nest. It is what it is, I guess. Because doing this is just going to make it real awkward right there. So just line them up. Now this is actually a bigger problem because that is not going to neatly get in there. You're actually going to have a wrinkle. So in that case, you want to loosen it up a little bit. Just so that it's more evenly distributed, but you are still going to shift that. It won't be as lined up as you want it to be, but it won't be super out of line either. So I'm not exactly sure why that happens. Obviously, it's my own error. So I'm just going to pull this a bit, because I believe that it would be... Let's see, that's the ear. I want the ear to land. I think it would be more like that. I'm done. I'm gonna double check before I sew to get an idea of what's going on here. Okie dokie. That's the last frontier. Look at that. I'm not too concerned if it doesn't fully line up at the end. Well, I mean, I am, but I know it's gonna get squared up and stuff. Just do your best. You don't want to take shortcuts and then at the end question yourself and all your life choices. You really just want to do your best. Take the time, because the quality of the product is so important and you'll be so happy with yourself. Okay, let's bring this to the machine. This part is pretty much just like any other part, except you're just going to go a little bit slower and you're just going to be a little careful. It would really help if you had this stiletto here or something like it. And seam guides are such a big help with giant bulky projects like this. And I'm going to backstitch. Okay. I'm going to hold that, just travel along. Let's get a look at her. Okay, yeah. Alrighty. I am super happy with that, because that, wait, hold on, you guys can't even see. Look at it. I know, right? I'm acting all surprised over here. I'm gonna just go over to my iron and I'm going to press the seam open, and then I'll show you this again so you can see it without there being a huge fold right here. I have the seam pressed open. For the most part, that's looking pretty good. Little bit of wrinkles here, but once this is washed, I don't think that's going to be too noticeable. All right, now the picture's coming together. And the cool thing is, looking at this, you can't see where the first and the second row are even meeting. It's all just formed together. It's merging. It's becoming one. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to finish doing all of the stuff. This is row 3, and I'll show you as it grows. All right, and that about wraps up this tutorial. I hope it was helpful. I hope that it was interesting. Let me know down below in the comments if this is something that you think you might want to try. And if so, what you will be making. If you got any questions about anything seen in this video or not seen in this video, let me know. There is a written tutorial in the description below, along with quite a few other helpful links to products and websites. And really, thank you so much for watching to the end. You're awesome. Well, I'm either going to lose subscribers or gain subscribers. I'm not sure which, maybe a little bit of both. Either way, have a great day. I love you. You're amazing. Bye.